Okay, hey everyone, Tony Bacigalupo here. It's Monday, October 2nd, and I'm hanging out with Letitia and Elena, and the topic of this meeting is going to be event programming and sponsorship. We'll see how close we stick to that topic. But I'm excited to have Letitia because she just joined over the weekend. She's working on some cool stuff. So let's start with introductions. Letitia, why don't you take it away, and then Elena, you can go, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be a part of this community. Been a fan for a little while and then finally took a jump after I saw some of your blog posts, Tony, which I mentioned in the Google group. So definitely excited to kind of get a little bit more organized. I've been in a sort of haphazard, impulsive fashion organizing pop-up co-working for about, I guess I would say a year now, or a little bit over a year, about 18 months. So I'm really keen on keeping track of the trends in Europe because I feel like the people in Europe have been doing a really good job of it in terms of not just being innovative, but focusing on the engagement of the community. So I gave a couple of examples to Heather yesterday in the group. I feel like in America, we always try to be really techy. So they're coming out with all these apps and just, it's like you check yourself in. And I feel like if you go to a restaurant when it's off hours and you check yourself into an iPad and you sit in the corner in a 100-seat restaurant, it's kind of not really my ideal sense of how we're supposed to be progressing co-working along. So I'm focusing, in fact, on women's only pop-up co-working and just all together community building type events. So I definitely, since that's my target market, want to focus on engagement and intimacy and really doing something unique, modern approach, but making something that people want to come back to and kind of not feeling alienated, because that's the whole point of wanting to leave your house to go to another place to begin with, is so that you don't feel alone or isolated in a sense. So that's what I'm working on right now.
Great. And where are you primarily focusing those efforts right now?
I'm originally from New York, so I'm focusing them on New York and LA, and I would like to add London to the mix this year, or coming 2018.
Okay. And what programs have you done recently? Like in what cities and where can we find
Like I said, my first trial in Europe was in Berlin. I did a whole summer series that went really well unexpectedly because I had just landed there and kind of just, threw out the concept and got some location sponsors on board and then did 2 or 3 events every single week for the summer. And they sold out pretty well, like about 6 to 12 people would come. And they were kind of focused more on the community building aspect and less on the working. Even though we had mostly expats that were remote workers, they kind of, when they would join for the ones that were just like the introductory meeting, they kind of liked that concept more than let's bring our laptops and always have focus on work. So I really did like that and appreciate that because I didn't get that when I was back in America. So now I can see how to really engage people without the working and then now combine it to be both. So I want to do all day pop-ups pretty much. Doesn't work as well when you're doing it out of your own home. Obviously, you don't want to run something from 12 to 7 p.m. because you want to have your own life at your apartment. So it's good for pop-ups that are at other locations. We're going to run them all day and then have hours where we do those focus sprints, which I see you're a fan of, and then hours where it's just about connecting and maybe like sharing a meal or potluck or something like that so that people can get to know each other and really feel like they made a friend or a connection or a collaborator or a mentor, something like that.
Great. And how are you attracting people? Like what are you doing to entice people to want to sign up and participate?
So far, I feel like it's been using my personal brand, I guess you could say, just putting myself out there, which has been a little bit scary to go from traditional marketing, which I was taught, and kind of using more content marketing and just relationship marketing. But the reward has been obviously a pleasant surprise. So content marketing, a lot of Facebook marketing, but not ads. I made that mistake last year. And even though I took the time to invest in learning how to do it, and I even eventually brought on a Facebook ads manager to run, I just feel like with the algorithms and just everything Facebook does, sometimes it's too hard to keep up and it's not worth the money, especially for a small business. So instead I do Facebook groups marketing, and that really took off. I'm trying to focus now on Instagram, but again, the algorithms have changed. So kind of just going to stick to having a newsletter and a blog and going from there. And now I'm developing a local ambassador program to get people in the different markets that we want to expand to be on the ground and draw up some engagement and interest.
Gotcha. And where can we see more info about what you're working on?
So far I have just been doing individual Facebook pages for them, and I had a meetup group. And I do believe in meetups groups. That's how I did LA launch, which was really successful, but I don't know, for some reason I don't see as many attendees coming from Meetup as much as they do on Facebook. I don't know the reason behind that. I know that I personally use Meetup every time I land in a new place, but I get a lot of signups, but just a lot of people, they'll cancel more often. So so just right now it's just on Facebook, and I can put those into the Google group later, and now I'm launching the website.
Yeah, great. Awesome. Yeah, just send us links. I love to poke around and kind of, see what your stuff looks like. And that would be awesome. That would be a big help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. All right. So this is great because Elena has been working in a more pop-up-ish capacity in recent times to work a lot of temporary space now, and recently launched it. Yay. Congratulations. Woo.
Yeah, congrats.
So, Elena, do you want to just catch everyone up on your story? I unmuted you, and just kind of let us know what you're up to.
Yeah, so we opened last Tuesday in we're calling the Vibe Labs, or temporary space until our new building is finished, hopefully in February. And we did kind of free co-working, just come in and check it out all last week. And then today is going to be the first day that we start actually putting people on paid memberships. And we've got our launch party for the Vibe Lab scheduled for October 12th, so a little over a week from today. And I'm like mad dash trying to get that put together because we don't have anything put together as of yet. So one of the things that we had thought to do, we're in this weird spot where we want to make a big deal about it, we want to celebrate it, but we don't want to go over the top because we actually want the real grand opening celebration to be when we're in the new building. So we're walking kind of a little bit of a tricky line on that. And our space is really, it's like executive offices, the way that we decided not to do an ETI because we're hoping not to be here long. So the way that the space is laid out is really not very conducive to events, and probably is very prone to like bottlenecking if we get too many people. And we have kind of no idea how many people are going to show up. So there was a big article in the local paper last week, which is great, but also has the potential to drive a lot of people here, which is good. I've tried to get people to RSVP. I've got a couple in this morning, but it's kind of anyone's guess. And one of the things I'm looking to do today and this week that is, I think, very relevant to this conversation is on the food side of things, what we're talking about doing. We basically have 5 rooms in this space that are each set up. One's a conference room, a couple different styles of like hot desk rooms, and a dedicated desk room. And what I'd like to do, because there's a number of members who are coming from neighboring cities that actually don't know this area very well, is I'd like to invite in 5 local restaurants or bars and have each of them kind of sponsor or set up or serve whatever their food is in each of those 5 rooms, so that it becomes a community thing, and like get to know what restaurants are close by, so you have cool places to go out to lunch. But I'm kind of in this weird spot where like, I don't know how to do this. If it's like, I mean, do I pay for it outright? Do I ask for them to sponsor it? I don't know. I have the concept, but I don't know how to pull it off.
Oh, I have a tip for this. This is good. So when you're in this situation where you kind of want somebody to give you something, but you also would not, you'd be open to buying from them as well. There are ways you can do this where you're not being too direct, but you're not being too indirect either. There's a way you can say it where it's like, I want to do this thing and I would love to have some local businesses come in and have their stuff to show. Would you be interested in getting involved? So there's some language around, we're doing this in a way where, we'd love to have some local restaurants come out and support us. And so then you kind of leave it a little bit open-ended and see what they come back to you with. A lot of times they'll immediately respond and say, oh yeah, we'll give you, our standard donation spread that we do for events. Or they might say, oh, sure, we'll give you a discount on our package or whatever, so you kind of like let them tell you what they would want to offer. And then, that way you're not like super pushing them to give away stuff since they don't know you yet.
Yeah. I was thinking about putting together like a 1-pager or 2-pager today, and also saying like who the others are that we're inviting in. So it's almost like a little bit of peer pressure between the competing restaurants to be like, oh, well, if so-and-so is going to put something in, then I'm not going to be left out, sort of thing. But yeah.
I think that's a good idea. And having local service providers of various kinds involved in the space really helps to create a sense of community and a sense of neighborhoodliness. So I'm a big fan of that. I've seen that done in other launch parties with great success. So awesome. Very good stuff. And I'm thinking, I'm trying to look you up because you're not on Google Maps yet, I noticed. So make sure you get on that. Oh, did you freeze up? Oh no. Did everybody freeze up? Hello. Oh no.
Some YouTube video.
I'm back. Can you hear me? No. Okay. Oof. All right. I think we're settled now. Brenda, did you introduce yourself while I was gone?
No. Letty said she recognized me from a YouTube video, and I was kind of concerned about what she meant by that. So I privately messaged her, what YouTube video?
It's just one of the previous posts you guys did for the group.
It's the interview we did.
Oh, okay. I was like, I might have a personal branding issue that I need to talk about offline.
You don't have a bigger separate account or anything like that.
That's always a frightening sentence to say. So my name's Brandon Napoli. I'm here in Palo Alto, California. For the last probably half a year at least, been trying to cultivate a co-working space inside of a church facility. And it's been a huge learning curve. There's some advantages to it, some disadvantages to it. I guess just to start where we are right now is we're actually hosting events. So I'm really thrilled that we're at a place of just hospitality, of welcoming in people and letting them through different events that are related to entrepreneurship or the type of target market we're looking for, tech, freelance. So we have an entrepreneur event this Thursday for individuals in the tech community, and then we're starting a coffee club in 2 weeks as well. And we're having a hackathon in 3 weekends, so like a 48-hour event where people in the tech industry have a couple different problem sets to try to figure out. And so that's exciting. At the same time, getting more and more feedback on the space. I'll be launching a website hopefully by this Thursday in time for the event, and then continuing to do some tenant improvements, some construction build out of the space, and slowly starting to welcome people informally into just using it. The rest of this year was really dedicated just to beta testing it. And there's reasons for that. I guess on the plus side, I haven't had to pay rent or any kind of overhead because of a relationship I have with the pastoral community to really try out this concept. And so that's a benefit of not having the overhead. The drawback is not having the control. And so it's a lot of working with the pastoral leadership to let them understand what's necessary in order for this to actually be hospitable for, a place of productivity and co-working. And if I'd be completely honest, it's kind of coming to a interesting point of crucial conversation. So in particular, who has control is coming up more and more frequently now of what the vision is going forward. And it's made me realize that for this to actually be not just worth my time, but a feasible venture, it has to be its own entity, and it needs to do that for the sake of the community as well, for trust that this wouldn't just be an extension of the church, which it never was supposed to be. And so there's just some interesting, unique questions that are getting wrestled around with right now. But the thrilling aspect is it's getting on the radar of a lot of individuals, including I have a meeting with the gentleman that manages the Impact Hub in Oakland, who's really interested, in several other faith-based institutions. So there's definitely some movement in a good direction, but some unique issues at the same time.
Okay, awesome. So what's really interesting about where the three of you are at right now is developing a sense of identity that's not necessarily super duper attached to a physical space. And that is really interesting to me, because I think one of the things that I'm finding is getting a lot of co-working spaces in trouble is that once they do have the space that they want, you end up getting caught up in the issues around getting attached to that physical space and the identity being attached to that, and the members' identities to the community being attached to it. So this is one of the issues that we had when we knew we were going to end up closing our co-working space, was that I wanted to find another co-working space to merge with, but people associated membership in my community with my location. It was like we were at this space and it didn't work if it was going to be somewhere else. If we moved and it was our space but somewhere else, then it could work. But to do it within someone else's location, the identity of being a part of the community was so tied to the space that it really made it difficult to kind of keep things going. So what I'm thinking is that you guys are in a position to have an advantage where you can create a sense of membership in this thing that people inherently know is not necessarily attached to the location. That the location happens to be where you are right now, and maybe you do have a permanent home one day, but even when you do have a permanent home, people already have this notion that the community, the network, is bigger than the locations that it occupies. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that definitely answers the question that I asked when I first joined in the Google group about sustainability of the idea. So when I just introduced myself earlier, I feel like it really gives me a little bit more confidence that developing the identity in the sense of they come to me and our pop-up is because of the engagement and the activity level, and walking away with value of connection versus, oh, that space was really cool and it had like a robotic coffee maker, I really have to come back here every week. I think that is definitely something that will give me the courage to say, okay, this is something that no matter where we land, people are going to be knowing us for this reason and this kind of values that we give them.
Right. Okay, cool. So so this is what I want to get down to is co-working on its own can be compelling for some people. Like just saying, hey, we're going to all work in this one place and let's do some stuff. But I found that it can be a little bit difficult to get people to want to come out. It's a little difficult to distinguish. So, Letitia, I know you mentioned earlier some of the programming that you're doing, which I think is so super great. I'd love for you to dive into that some more. And then Elena and Brandon, I'm wondering what other ideas you have or thoughts you have as far as invitations you're creating for more intentional programming, more, basically stuff that's more than just people sitting in the same room. And then, we can brainstorm a little bit about some ideas if you'd like, because this is definitely my favorite thing to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Letitia, do you want to maybe just tell us a little bit more about what you've organized that you found to be exciting that's worked for you?
Yeah, actually, I was going to say, if somebody wants to go first. I actually literally spent the weekend trying to knock my friends and typed up all programming, which I've never done. I usually just throw up the Facebook page or the event page and then go impulsively from there. But I literally made programming guides so that we are all the same format, no matter what city you live in. So I'll take a look at those now, and then I can be able to share a little bit from them.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit, but I think we got the gist of what you were saying.
Hmm.
So, okay, Elaine and Brandon, it's, the hot potato has been tossed over to you.
Okay. So I guess intentional programming in particular, one thing I'm looking at is trying to couple on some type of leadership development curriculum that would be accessible, and not just a curriculum, but an experience that would allow the participants to continue just to flush out what it means to continue to be stronger in their leadership skills. And so that's something I'm gathering resources on to ideally offer that as a part of the program. Another part of the program, I believe this would be considered, is swapping membership fee for service-based work. So, incorporating people's core competency to continue to, further something that's of the benefit of the community, that's not directly tied to their own, profit motive, but, for instead of charging them $400 a month, charge them $200 and say, just donate, 4 hours of your time for, this act of service, right? So, again, with a limited amount of overhead, I have more ability to get creative with what to do with, creating an exchange of service for fee kind of a thing, or vice versa. So that's another program thing I'm looking at incorporating.
That sounds really exciting. It sounds like there's some potential there to maybe get some folks within your community to offer up their services in a way that would be valuable to the community and also to the people themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is something I'm actually really interested in, where, if we construct this notion that every person has something to contribute and every person has something to kind of gain from being a part of the community, then it's very easy for someone to see when they walk in or that when they visit your website that it's not just you providing the programming, it's not just you providing the space, but it's this person is a CPA. They're going to help you with their taxes. This person's a sales professional. They're going to help you with your marketing. This person's, a web professional. They're going to help you with your website, whatever that is. And every one of those people is maybe offering something up free of charge just to build their own personal brand, which I found to actually be very, very successful in the stuff that I've seen in my own communities. So it makes for kind of a compelling thing to ask somebody to say, hey, would you be willing to lead a little workshop, give a quick talk, and then maybe we do a co-working session around that topic. Something I'm going to be playing with more here in the city in the coming weeks and months. So we could compare notes on it.
Yeah. That sounds exactly like, we're on the same wavelength with that. Not surprising. I guess the third thing, this is somewhat programmatic, but just to catch you and the group up, we have the unique asset of having a daycare on the premise, and I had a good conversation with the gentleman that runs it, and he said he would reserve about a handful of slots only for those using the co-working space for their kids to have a place. And this is the #1 daycare in Palo Alto, so it's not some small little thing. It's legit. It's been around for 20 years, so it's almost like the #1 draw now when I talk to people, which is super encouraging, because I don't want to create something that could just be replicated elsewhere. If this is, gives, especially those, I think, in our generation that have like the 2 to 6 year old, and don't want to sacrifice, parenting for, creating a business. It's encouraging just to have that as a framework now to try to build a program around. So what does that look like? What does it look like to be able to say, we're going to take a 15-minute break and go, hang out with these 5-year-olds and remember what play looks like, right? And remember what things like that. I just kind of, what does play programming look like more than just like having a daycare on the premise and experiencing it, right? And that inspiration that would come from that.
I dig it. That sounds terrific. I'd love to. I'm looking forward to hearing your notes.
Yeah. My drawings.
Yeah. Well, it also helps to humanize things a little bit. If you've got parents bringing their kids in, I feel like it's so easy in work environments that we get into this very businessy kind of a setup. Even if we're talking to each other, by the coffee machine or something, I've seen it just be very narrow in its scope. Like people kind of stay within their, the social norms of what we expect in the workplace, so to speak. But the moment you introduce a child, a pet, like something really human and personal, a family member comes to visit, everybody just melts. Everyone becomes people again. I feel like there's something to that can really help to build a sense of, morale and connectedness between the people in the space.
Yeah, I agree. I also want to applaud Brandon because every single daycare launch that I've seen happening, I think I've seen news articles for about 5 or 6 in the past couple of months for co-working concepts that are built around having daycare available, and they're all by women for women. So it's pretty cool. I'm sure, the huge conglomerates like WeWork or something are going to start facilitating that throughout their chains. But on the individual level or the more private level, all of them have been because the one saw the need and then they opened their own. But I've never seen a guy open it and try to imbue that family life or welcome them.
It's another area that's actually really interesting to look at is sub-communities and creating specific groups, right? Creating specific pillars of culture within your space. So if you're going to have a community, what you're really going to have is a bunch of people who share different interests and share different strengths and weaknesses and things like that. And so one of the other things you can do is you're thinking about intentional programming is not just getting those professional service providers on board, but also people who maybe have a common interest where by banding them together as a specific group, there's a little bit more cohesiveness to be had. And then they can have an identity inside of your larger space. So for example, in New York, there's a space called the Center for Social Innovation, which is generally social good focused. But within it, they have a lab specifically for women entrepreneurs. And so they have a specific portion of the space dedicated for that group. They have leadership that is dedicated to programming and, working with the people who are in that group. So it's not exclusive to women in the sense that it's part of this larger community, but there is still this, women focused, let's get together, have a safe space, have a concentrated space for our interest group. And I think that that's brilliant because then you can have more specific interests fitting within the more general umbrella and you kind of make the best of both worlds. Yeah, I'm thinking about this a bit because there are a lot of women-focused co-working spaces in New York coming up now, and it's a big deal, and I think it's a great thing. But there is this conversation about, the extent to which it's exclusive versus, just the degree of inclusiveness, right? Okay, maybe the space is, rents to women only, but can men come on occasion for meetings or events, or how can we kind of, do business together in a way that's still providing that safe space and that kind of magic that you have when it's only the people who are, share that thing who are in the same room together. So it's an interesting thing, but yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry?
I would love to hear more about that from your perspective, and I guess Brandon's too, because I feel sometimes very sexist in the work that I do, because at the core of it, I guess we're kind of almost like a women's empowerment brand in the sense that we were women only. And sometimes I do come across articles, or people will send me articles where the comment section is just a ton of men going really ape on the editor and saying, why are all these for women by women co-working spaces or community brands coming out and men aren't invited to the events, or they're not invited to the office hours. So I feel like the changes I've seen is that they'll have gender neutral events, like men can come to a weekend event or something like that, but still aren't allowed to be a member. So I definitely think that we're not going to change maybe our original concept. We might follow that one that I just mentioned about having certain days or certain events where we welcome families or we welcome your plus one or whatever. But it is kind of hard to know if that we're rubbing people the wrong way in the greater community, not just our own member community.
Yeah. Okay. So I do have a lot of thoughts on this, and in part because I helped to start an organization that dealt with this very heavily called Girl Develop It, which does low cost programming classes geared towards women. And
Yeah.
what was that?
No, I've heard of it, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, they're all over the world now. It's amazing. It was founded by my girlfriend at the time, and so I was the token guy on the founding board, which was terrific. I quite enjoyed being the outnumbered man in the room. But we had this big debate: do we make it women only? Do we make it somewhat inclusive of guys? Things like that. And so first of all, I don't think anybody can fault women for wanting to create a safe environment just for them, right? Like, for goodness sakes, there have been more than enough things that have been men only over the course of the centuries, and there still are. That forget that. If women want to do stuff that's women only, God bless, please do. But what we did at Girl Develop It, which I thought was really clever, was we said they were low cost classes geared towards women. And we basically said, if you're a guy and you want to take this class and you don't mind going to a class that's called Girl Develop It and being taught by women, being surrounded by women, then come on out. Great, sure, let's have you by. And I think that really created a really collegial sense of, maybe the guy is going to, the role reversal is going to be there, and the guy's going to be the one who's of the other gender in the room. And that maybe that's okay. Maybe that's part of what we have to learn how to play with is, what does it look like when the roles are reversed, and how can we play with the feelings that come up for that? I know that for Girl Develop It in particular, the reason that Sarah started it and some of the other women who started it was because they took programming classes and they were used to being the one woman in a room full of 30 people. And so I think the fact that they want to be able to have a safe environment it makes sense, but also to, find clever ways to be inclusive. I think for a shared space, it's very easy to create those divisions. If you could say, well, we're only going to rent the private offices to women, but the shared co-working memberships, we can, men are allowed to come and co-work in the hallway. So there's some sense of, there's some security, there's some sense of consistency there. And of course, to have program to program, some programs women only, some programs, deliberately inclusive, but that's kind of what I've been playing with. Elena, have you done any women specific programming or had any conversations around that?
Sorry, I'm kind of jumping in halfway through the conversation, so I'm not sure I caught the first part of it. But
gender stuff and specific sub-communities or even spaces dedicated to it.
Yeah, so we just because of where we are, we don't really have the luxury of being able to create the entire space as being any particular small community, but what we're looking to do is create sub-communities kind of within the greater space. And there's been a lot of interest in women-only stuff. I was thinking, as you were talking, Leticia, I remember from the Juicy conference in New York, I went to one of the women who co-work side meetings or sessions or whatever. And there was one guy who showed up in the room, and he was very, very welcome. There's probably, 60 women in the room. And he said, he's like, look, I hope you don't mind that I'm here. I'm here because I actually really want to support and be an advocate, and I'm opening a space, and I want to know what I need to have in my space to help women in my community feel more welcome. And I think it was like the perfect example of saying like, hey, even within, mixed gender spaces or mixed, the one that comes to mind is like some spaces that are pure tech or pure incubator or whatever. There's a lot of things that can be done to kind of create environments where everything works. But I'm babbling. We're not doing anything women specific ourselves, but we're looking to have particular kind of programming tracks that would be.
I like it. Yeah, no, that's good. And you're reminding me actually, Elena, that if there is a women who co-work session during Juicy Canada this week, then I want to see if I can get the men who support women who co-work group together as well.
There is a session planned. I'd have to look up exactly when or where. I'm not going to make it up as I had hoped, but I know that Women Who Co-work does have a session planned.
All right, good. Very good. Cool. All right. So what needs to be done that isn't being done yet in terms of the creating these invitations, reaching out to people? Maybe we can come up with some homework that we can check back in on. What I would love to see is, for each of us to have other people who are leading programs, maybe with your help, but at least involved, that are creating invitations for people to join your community for a reason other than to rent workspace.
Well, and the other challenge that I have and see is that, and I doubt that it's particular to our area, but it may be a smaller town thing. There is a very strong tendency for people to come in. They don't understand the difference between just like relationship building and being part of a community and like, this is my opportunity to sell my business. And so anytime that we've done like meetup groups and things, we've tried to have really strict parameters saying like, this is not a place to sell. Like, please leave your salesperson stuff at home. Like, be authentic, be you, help us understand what you do, but don't sell to us. And that's something that I'm kind of turning over my head a lot right now, because what I'd like to do with open enrollment coming up for health insurance, that's obviously a big topic for freelancers and kind of independent workers, self-employed. And I would love to do some kind of session around that. But I'm really struggling to figure out a way to do it that it doesn't become a sales pitch from a bunch of health insurance providers. Like, I want their insight and their wisdom and their intelligence and their guidance, but I don't want it to become a pitch to like buy my services through you. And so I'd welcome any thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I've got an idea, Elena. Somebody interrupt me if you also have an idea, because I don't want to do all the talking, but invite the providers to out themselves. Like if you use Eventbrite, create a separate ticket for them, or put a call in the description and say, hey, if you are a service provider and you're in the business of helping people get health insurance, or find access to healthcare, great. We want to know who you are. And let's create, maybe create a little bit of a sandbox for them. So you can say, this is going to be a peer-to-peer thing, but we also want people who have valuable advice to be able to offer some value to the group. So if you're an industry professional, great. Maybe we'll have you come up and speak for a minute and offer your top tip for, when you're doing your health insurance search, or, something like that. So you can create a contained environment, and then, also be able to, give people this sense of safety that they're not just going to go and get pitched nonstop. Does that make sense? I'm not sure what kind of program you have in mind. So.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, I'd actually like to have them lead it. And I could imagine doing like some kind of like, I don't know if it's like a lunchtime panel or something with 2 or 3 insurance, I don't know what the proper word is, advisors or providers. So I think the outing would already have been done, is that, they're kind of the top of the ticket. But yeah, I don't know. This is one example of many where I think it's like, how do we provide these types of events and activities that are of value to members without it becoming a sales pitch every time?
Sure. Yeah, well, so I think, first of all, you can just explicitly state, this is a don't pitch me, bro event, right? So, all attendees are advised not to tolerate being pitched at. We're here to talk as people, and we're here to build quality relationships. And we could write up a little blurb. Actually, this would be great for us to all include in our events. But it's good sales. If you're trying to sell something, get to know people and be a decent human being. Don't just, shotgun your business card across the room. Get to know people. This is smart business for you anyway. And so I think if you put 2 sentences like that into the event description, and you also maybe say something at the welcome, just to say, hey, this is a, no pitch zone, then I think you'll be fine. And people will reinforce it. If you have a few folks that and trust in the community, and they're trained to look out for it, it'll take care of itself. With public events, once you reach certain numbers, you're going to have a weirdo. This is a very important thing. This is driven so crazy for so long. There are people in New York, like meetup organizers, where when we talk to each other, we talk about like, oh yeah, did that guy come? Like we know exactly who you're talking about. And he's the guy where, you don't want him to catch you, because once he does, he just starts talking about stuff, and you just can't stop him no matter what you do. And he kind of smells funny, and that's mean to say, but like it's weird, right? It's going to happen. So figure out how to mitigate that as best as you can. Recognize that you will probably stress out about it more than the other people who are at the event. It's absolutely a reality, right? Once you hit a certain number, if you're going to have 100 people, one of them is going to be weird. It's just the way it's going to be. And unfortunately, it becomes true when you get famous too, where, once you get to a certain number of followers or once you get a certain level of visibility, then you start dealing with stalkers and, threats and all that kind of stuff. It happens. But anyway, there's another thing you can do. Why are you guys laughing? What's funny? Am I funny? Is this funny?
Almost, because you're wearing an American Embassy shirt in a different setting. It almost looks like you're on witness protection program right now as you're saying this.
Interestingly enough, my dad told me, because my dad gave me this, is the Rome American Embassy. He works for Homeland Security, and he said don't travel with that sweater. It makes you a target. So there you go. Not that I'm going to worry about bringing this to Vancouver or Dublin, but anyway, so one of the things, so this is actually a big problem for me. It's something I'm playing with right now because I moved back to New York. I want to get back into community organizing, but I also know that once I get successful with the community organizing I'm doing, the energy vampires start to come out, and I really have a hard time managing that personally. Like it stresses me out. It makes me not want to organize. And so it's something that I'm really trying to figure out how best to manage. And I think what I'm playing with is balancing curation, invite only type stuff versus public stuff, and really creating some healthy layers of protection around the public stuff where, I'm not doing a public thing unless I have multiple other people there who are on board helping out, so that it's kind of distributed, right? So there's more people here who can help. And also starting out with something curated. If I want to start something brand new from scratch, I have a meetup group in New York that I don't use. It has 1,700 members on it. I have used it for many events. But if I start something new and the first thing I do is send it out to that meetup group, it could be me and 10 weirdos, right? Like it could be really bad. It's unfortunate, but people who have trouble making friends are going to be on these groups looking to make friends. And I actually love that. I love being able to provide that for people who might have a hard time making friends otherwise. I was not a popular kid in high school. I love being not too good for anybody. But at the same time, you have to create some culture to begin with in order for this to work. And so Elena, you're saying get closer to high as well and meet up. Yeah, it's a problem. And you know what? Meetup, I will tell you, because I'm friends with the meetup people. I'm friends with the CEO. I'm friends with the team. They are really banging their heads against this. You know how they have this feature, the nice to see you feature, where after the event, they send you an email and say, these are the other people who, came. Click nice to see you. They said, this is so fun. This is great insider politics. They'll never say this publicly, but they created that feature to see who attends a lot of events, and no one says that it was nice to see them. So they could try to figure out who the weirdos are and how to manage it. Really, really interesting. I don't think that, I'm not sure what you can do with that information, but I think they're trying to figure out how to address it. And it's just this very, very interesting, elusive kind of a problem. Okay, so there is a way of dealing with it. And this comes back to the ruler rule. I don't know which of you are familiar with this, but it's one of the resources I have, and I highly recommend it for planning, which is that you have different kinds of events for different kinds of experiences. The big tick on the ruler is like your annual anniversary party. Everybody's invited. You can have 200 people there. You have the weirdos there. You have the VIPs there. Everybody comes. And then you've got the medium and the smaller events. And I think what you want to be able to try to do is distribute your public, open to the public events where you might have some weirdos, but they're kind of managed, versus your curated events where it's going to just be people who are invited, either personal contacts or paying members. One of the best filters for weirdos is money. There were very few weirdos who could afford $300 a month for a co-working space. right? And those weirdos, at least they're weirdos who are, like socially acceptable enough to be able to get people to pay the money. So like we can kind of work with those people, right? So they're more like socially awkward as opposed to weirdo. So, like money. So if it's members only, if it's only people who are paying you monthly membership, the worst actors are going to get filtered out. So you kind of create this sense of, okay, this is going to be open to the public. We're going to brace yourselves for the weirdos, but it's going to be contained because it's a big enough event or whatever that it works out. If you're going to do like a cultivation group where it's very intimate, very personal, it's only going to be 5 or 10 people. That's going to be, that's going to be weirdo free zone. That's got to be, paid members only. And that's probably going to help you. And it might be that the first version of your event is going to be 100% invite only. People don't even know it exists. It doesn't even have an invite. It doesn't even have a link anywhere. It's just people that you personally know getting together and talking about stuff. I'm doing a program after I get back in town 10 days from now. And it's the first program I'm doing to build community in New York again. And it doesn't exist. There's no event. I literally just am emailing people I know, and I've curated the ever-loving crap out of it. I'm like, just real, like people I really, really think are the absolute best people I know for this thing. And I want those people to be the first people. I want them to set the cultural norms and, kind of get to know this is the standard. And then once we start opening stuff up to the public, anybody else who shows up is going to be outnumbered. So this is me ranting about it because I have a lot of thoughts on it. But yes, it's a big deal.
I feel like for long term, my alter ego would totally do something, not in an exclusive, pretentious New York way, which is kind of why I love New York, but in a way where it's like you don't go through all the work of having to put so many touch points online and listing events and all that, and it's just invite only. And people are, okay, how do I get on this list? How do I find out about it? And it's just you just wait until one day you get an email that said, hey, this is where we're going to be. You can come. But I kind of like the minimalist approach. But I mean, it's 2017, so you have to put stuff on social, you have to email and all that.
Yeah, and I like graceful curation. So like one of the things I didn't like about a lot of the other spaces that opened in New York after us was that they created this air of exclusivity, right? You have to apply. If you're worthy, maybe we'll accept you. And I never liked that because I don't like pretending to be too good for anybody. And I know a lot of them, it was BS. They were just saying that, but they would accept anybody who applied, which is so New York. Like, if you want people to want anything in New York, you have to make them believe they can't have it first. That's the magic formula to get people to want things in New York, which maybe I will play.
Or you want them to pay for something that they can't afford. That's also the psychological trick you use.
What was that, Letitia? I'm sorry.
I said that's also the psychological trick, is that if you want them to pay for something they can't afford yet, is make it super exclusive beyond belief.
Yeah, I lost you a little bit there. Sorry. Maybe type it into the chat. For those of you watching on YouTube, Letitia just said in the chat, okay. And I'm chatting right now. So we'll fill the dead air by doing this. Haha.
Did you guys ask me a question right when I stepped out? Was that more?
No. Letitia is going to make a comment about exclusivity and something along those lines around creating those layers.
Tony, quick thought off the top of my head on a programmatic thing that's kind of fun would be like a trivia night, but the trivia would be like interesting things about each person in the co-working space, and perhaps like as a space manager, you'd like be able to to have conversations, maybe funny interesting personal things, but also professional things, and then maybe one night have beers and an hour of here's some interesting trivia about people, and you could do like a Kahoot thing where they do it like where people use their smartphones and give the answers, or do a bingo thing where you have to find someone that has a certain experience, but just ways of making people mingle in a way that's somewhat directed versus just completely accidental.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. That sounds terrific. It sounds like something like that is like a way of creating a little bit more structure to like a mixer networking night, happy hour type thing, where instead of it just being a room full of people and letting it, go on its own. I think absolutely anytime you do something like that, like a social event, that you should add some layer of intentionality to get people to mix who maybe wouldn't have mixed otherwise. So the bingo thing is such a tried and true. The trivia thing is great. And then I'd say the next level up in terms of structured programming, to make it more of a draw for people maybe who aren't just looking for the social, is having like either a show and tell or like an interesting thing that I've learned. So then, everybody gets to kind of show off something cool that they know, a trick or a technique that they've learned that's useful to other people in the room, or showing off like what I worked on, which is so super cool. Show and tell is one of my favorite programs. Every co-working space should have one every other month. Co-working show and tells are so important because everybody gets to know what other people are working on, and the person presenting gets amazing feedback. So sometimes somebody will be showing off a new business, a new product that they're developing. It's not ready to launch yet. They put it up on the screen. They test out their pitch. They test out whatever it is that they're trying to present, and then everybody gives them terrific feedback. It's a great way to foster relationships. Absolutely must do show and tells. All right.
How often have you done them, Tony?
We did them on a weird schedule of like once every 6 weeks or something. So I would say try to make it like, I would err on the side of not too frequent, just to make it not too much work. And then if you're overflowing with interest, then scale it up. But maybe start with, once every 8 weeks. And I'm big on rhythms as well for these programs, for your core programs. So if you make it, the first Tuesday of every other month, then people can put it in their calendars and it's pretty reliable. People know it's happening. So I think for anything you're going to do regularly, put it on a calendar, and put it on a calendar way in advance. Put the whole year's worth of regular programs up now, and make it something people can subscribe to.
That's what we're doing. I mentioned at the top of the call. I'm totally behind the idea.
Awesome. Letitia, I'm reading your chats now. New York City is also known for making people spend money that they don't have by being overly exclusive. So, for example, oh, wow, this new co-work is so something I need. I will max out my card to be a part of it. Yeah, it's absolutely. We're a city that stands in line for cronuts. So, we're a weird city.
Hey, don't dog on that.
What's that?
I said, don't rag on it. I'm probably one of the people in line.
Yeah, well, hey, look, I've stood in line for everything. I'm a New Yorker through and through, so.
Brandon, can I ask, you mentioned, I can't remember what you called it exactly, but coffee hour, coffee something.
Oh, just a coffee club?
What did you guys do for that?
Well, the first one's going to be, actually, I think I had to try to import some cronuts from New York, so Tony knows a seller. But no, the first one's in 2 weeks. I'll give you the agenda for it. But yeah, we're having like a speaker with a topic and networking and some craft beverages. So not just like the typical cheap coffee, but like pour over or like AirPress or cold brew that I have a buddy that started a coffee shop's going to come in and make it. So it's like quality craft beverages in that kind of a coffee club. Very no non-committal kind of an experience, but just welcoming into the space. Yeah. I think we lost Tony. I think his identity's been compromised, and his.
Brandon, what were you mentioning about partnering with restaurants when you first came on the call?
I think Alana mentioned that.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear who said it or what was being said because I was breaking up.
Partnering with restaurants, you said?
Well, we're just wanting to get into the local community and get restaurants to be a part of what you guys are doing. Somebody said that.
Yeah, no, that was me. So I was talking about for our launch party and wanting to kind of bring in the different restaurants and kind of other businesses that are within kind of walking distance from where our space is at. So that's what I'm trying to figure out, how we can bring in basically a restaurant for each of our rooms for food for the launch party. But I'm still, that's
my God,
today.
memories. An idea you could do, I don't what grade I was in, but a long time ago, probably junior high school. We had a this event called Around the World. Well, actually, it was part of a bigger event, but when it came to the food, it was called Around the World. And they turned the whole cafeteria into this empty space that had tables that lined up, and everybody had to represent like their culture through food. So you could do something like that and have the restaurants choose like what culture they want to represent. It could either be through like literal, country cuisine, or it can be something more meta than that. Just something that reflects like what the restaurant is about. So it might be a unique way to almost mimic kind of like block parties or street food festivals, or where the restaurants feel like they're competing, but not really in a hostile sense, just a really fun like who can one up each other on creativity, almost like a case.
Exactly. Now I need you to go make that pitch to the restaurants.
Now you guys have me thinking that it would be nice to do some more elevation of our own programming as a group. One of the things that I'm thinking about going into this conference is, of course, recruiting more folks to join. And I think that we have a lot of value that we create just within these like video calls and the toolkit, things like that. But I'm thinking about how to be more proactive about the fact that we share an identity as independent space community builders, and how we can do more to kind of show off what we're about, that we're not just space renters, but that we're, community builders, and that we're doing things that it's a little bit more substantial. So maybe there's a way that we can show off a little bit more of the kinds of programming that we're doing. It would be really great, actually, even if we just put together as a one-time experiment, like send me your calendars for October, just links to all of your events, and it would be fun to just kind of say, like, look at all the cool stuff that our member spaces are doing for October and November. Would that be fun?
Yeah.
And maybe we get a little Google juice for everybody's space to, up the organics or whatever. And one of my dreams, one of my absolute dreams, is to actually coordinate some programming across spaces, so that no matter where you are, there's the same program happening at the same time. And so you could travel and actually still kind of maintain the same rhythm.
So I wonder, sorry, go ahead, Letitia.
Oh, no, I was just saying that's pretty popular on Meetup. For the last few years, there would be like one sponsor that would approach different Meetup groups in different cities and throw their signature event across Meetup groups. And if it was locally, then let's say, for example, New York or Chicago would have some kind of like a product or a brand of some sort, and they would approach like 3 different Chicago-based Meetup groups and say, hey, we're putting on this event, we're sponsoring it, everybody's going to get the same swag, and we'll have open bar, and like the programming is the same at each one, but they would invite all the Meetup groups organizers to create a Meetup event for it, and then people felt like they were a part of something bigger.
So I wonder, the one upcoming opportunity that's really obvious to me is Global Entrepreneurship Week in November.
Oh,
that I still remember the exact dates. It goes over November 10th. I think it's that week on the calendar for me. But that's been like on my list of like, we got to figure out what the heck we're doing. But that could be a cool opportunity to kind of tie the spaces together.
So you think maybe
it's like an overall concept.
Sorry, say that again, Letitia. Sorry.
I was just saying that hackathons are pretty like centralized at this point, but there's a few hackathon communities that try to get different cities to participate at the same time in a big event.
Yeah, and I want to emulate them, right? I want to emulate all these programs that are a little bit more coordinated, a little bit more visible, because one of the big issues in the movement right now is the fact that the community-focused, the people who want to build real impactful co-working spaces are having a hard time distinguishing themselves from the people who just want to rent office space. And I think that the answer is through programming, that if we show people other ways to engage in these communities other than to just rent workspace, and emphasize that as the invitation, then that creates space where, if you have just to rent an office space and you have a really great community co-working space, they're both going to say on the website, our top priority is community. But one of them is full of it and one of them is being honest, right? So how do we distinguish? There's really no way to do it just with language. But if this one says come in for a tour to rent our offices, and this one says come hang out at all these awesome affordable programs that we're doing, that speaks for itself. And I think that creates a more compelling message. So that's why I really want to emphasize that programming.
As a New Yorker who went to school in New York for writing, I think the number one feedback we get for the reason why our community is strong and known as a brand across cities is our marketing language that I write personally. It's been hard to bring on copy editors and writers and outsource that. I'm able to really tap into what my one really, innate skill is writing and say, this is why we are literally a community, not just like BS online, but when you come here, you feel part of it automatically. And that's because I feel like I had to really niche down who my target was besides just saying we're different because we're just women. That worked in 2015, but now there's so many for women by women co-working spaces. So my initiative and my mission was always about trying to combat isolation, trying to combat, anxiety, the awkwardness of showing up and becoming a member at a new space and feeling like I don't fit or it's already been, turned into a cliquey type of environment, trying to combat mental health issues that come from just being a remote worker and having absolutely no one, which I think was incidentally in the first place I read your blog correctly. So just niching that and really describing who our community is through language, I think that you can make it seem like it's not just because when people will read what you're about, no matter what touch point it is online, it sounds like you're fighting exactly that person. So they feel like almost like alone reading it, but they feel like they're part of a community automatically and they get enjoyed.
Yeah, no, it's so we lost you a little bit there, but I think I got the gist of what you're saying. Elena, I wanted to see if you wanted to say just one more thing about the Global Entrepreneurship Week. Were you thinking that we could try to maybe use that as a way of doing a coordinated program across member spaces and kind of piggyback on that as an excuse to kind of pick a date and get some attention?
That's kind of when you mentioned that it might be cool to try to tie some of the spaces together with something like that. That's the first thing that occurred to me. We don't have plans yet. I don't know what we're going to be doing. But it kind of seems like an obvious one where it's already a global week dedicated to something that our spaces generally are pretty passionate about.
Cool. All right. I love the idea of doing something, and I think it would be great to coordinate. It would be really cool to coordinate that, even just one event, one day, using that event as a catalyst. That could be really neat, and it's enough time that we could plan that. So maybe let's plan to revisit that in a discussion over chat sometime soon, and we can kind of hash out what we think it could be. Awesome. All right, guys, I got to jet, but thank you for an awesome call. This is really fun. Really want to keep this conversation going about programming. I think there's a lot of potential. And Letitia, please do send the links to your Facebook groups, especially in New York, because I'm doing stuff in New York, so we should do stuff in New York together.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be our full website. We already had a website, but I'm just doing a minimalist version now because I want to focus just on programming and see how that approach works. So it'll be basically a guide to all our programming and our calendar of events for the rest of the year, pretty much what you were talking about.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Tony.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great day. Have a great week, and keep being awesome. Take care.
Thank you.